Titus 3, verses 10 through 11. A man that is an heretic after the first and second admonition reject, knowing that he that is such is subverted and sinneth, being condemned of himself.
No, I'm trying to convince you that you do sin. No, I'm trying to convince you that you do sin. Because every man sins at least 7 times a day. Because every man sins at least 7 times a day.
No.
So
John 8:15. Ye judge after the flesh, I judge no man. Romans 3, verses 19 through 20. Now we know that what things soever the law saith, it saith to them who are under the law, that every mouth may be stopped, and all the world may become guilty before God. Therefore, by the deeds of the law there shall no flesh be justified in his sight, for by the law is the knowledge of sin.
The 𝕊𝔸ℚ version says, the disposition of the flesh is death. But in the King James Version, he says it's the carnal mind that is death. Because in the garden, the knowledge of good and evil made us carnally minded, convincing our hearts to judge after the flesh rather than to be spiritually minded and rest in Christ.
So did you say that sin is more like a mental state? Like you believe that you're a sinner, therefore you are. But if you don't believe you're a sinner, then you're not a sinner.
No, if you believe in the righteousness of God. That's why he said he reproves the world of sin, because they don't believe on me.
But Kerry, there's 1.2 billion people, they're called Catholics, and they believe in the righteousness of God. How do you distinguish these people?
Well, they can say they believe it, but if they still believe they sin, then I know that they don't actually believe it.
John 7:24. Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Matthew 7:20. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them. Proverbs 13:2. A man shall eat good by the fruit of his mouth, but the soul of the transgressors shall eat violence. Luke 6:45. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil. For of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaketh.
Because every man sins at least 7 times a day. Because every man sins at least 7 times a day. No, I'm trying to convince you that you do sin.
You're trying to convince me that I'm unrighteous.
Psalm 64, verses 3 through 8. Who whet their tongue like a sword, and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words, that they may shoot in secret at the perfect. Suddenly do they shoot at him, and fear not. They encourage themselves in an evil matter. They commune of laying snares privily. They say, who shall see them? They search out iniquities. They accomplish a diligent search. Both the inward thought of every one of them and the heart is deep. But God shall shoot at them with an arrow. Suddenly shall they be wounded. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves. All they that see them shall flee away.
And you fall short of the glory of God because you do sin. You don't recognize your sin.
And sin is transgression of the law, and the law is him, and it's spiritual. The law is spiritual. So that means we're transgressing God. And in transgressing God, what it means when it says all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, we've all worshipped the outward appearance. We've all worshipped the creature, us, man, more than the creator. We've all done that. That's why we all have transgressed against God. But as believers in his righteousness, when someone wants to judge me and say that I'm unrighteous, or tell me that I still sin because they're judging the works of my flesh under the law, because by the law is the knowledge of sin, I declare that I am righteous, because righteousness doesn't come from my works. I was made righteous, blameless in spirit, soul, and body. 1 Thessalonians 5:23. He preserves us blameless in spirit, soul, and body. He already reconciled the whole world. They just don't believe him yet. And that's why he says to awake to righteousness and sin not. And hey, Paul, or hey, Timothy, them that sin rebuke. Why are you rebuking them? Because we go out and we do his works, his good works that we walk in, showing people that they're not actually believing in the righteousness of God. We're righteous as we are. To say that your work of the flesh is sin is to say you're not righteous as you are, because you're not actually believing in the righteousness of God. It's his works, not ours.
2 Timothy 2:19. Nevertheless, the foundation of God standeth sure, having this seal, the Lord knoweth them that are his. And let every one that nameth the name of Christ depart from iniquity. 2 Peter 2:14. Having eyes full of adultery, and that cannot cease from sin, beguiling unstable souls, and heart they have exercised with covetous practices, cursed children.
And you have no other option that if you're not righteous, well, then you're a sinner. But you don't want to recognize you're a sinner. But
no, you're trying
sin.
to convince me that I'm unrighteous.
But
no, you're trying
sin.
to convince me that I'm unrighteous.
But
no, you're trying
sin.
to convince me that I'm unrighteous.
Psalm 57 verses 2 through 7. I will cry unto God Most High, unto God that performeth all things for me. He shall send from heaven and save me from the reproach of him that would swallow me up. Selah. God shall send forth his mercy and his truth. My soul is among lions, and I lie even among them that are set on fire, even the sons of men, whose teeth are spears and arrows, and their tongue a sharp sword. Be thou exalted, O God, above the heavens. Let thy glory be above all the earth. They have prepared a net for my steps. My soul is bowed down. They have digged a pit before me, in the midst whereof they are fallen themselves. Selah. My heart is fixed, O God, my heart is fixed. I will sing and give praise.
Know ye not that I speak to them that know the law, how that the law hath dominion over a man as long as he liveth? And then the whole entire chapter is about him explaining his life under the law. And then if you go to the very next chapter, in verse 2, he says, for the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus hath made me free from the law of sin and death. Because in the transforming of your mind, your heart, that's why he says in Acts 28:27, they see and they hear, but their heart doesn't understand. And they don't get converted unless their heart understands. It's the work of God that we would believe him, that we would believe in his righteousness. That's what it's about, is believing. It's circumcising the heart to believe. And that's why Paul literally said, them that sin rebuke before all that others may fear. He said this to Timothy for a reason. Because those that are still sinning, still believing that they're still in sin, are not believing Jesus' righteousness yet. Are not believing Jesus' righteousness yet. Are not believing Jesus' righteousness yet.
No, I'm trying to convince you that you do sin. No, I'm trying to convince you that you do sin.
You understand that you're trying to convince me of exactly what every single unbeliever tries to convince me of? You understand that you're trying to convince me of exactly what every single unbeliever tries to convince me of?
1 Corinthians 4:21. What will ye? Shall I come unto you with a rod, or in love, and in the spirit of meekness? Proverbs 10:13. In the lips of him that hath understanding wisdom is found, but a rod is for the back of him that is void of understanding. Proverbs 23:13. Withhold not correction from the child, for if thou beatest him with the rod, he shall not die. 2 Timothy 4:2. Preach the word, be instant in season, out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort, with all longsuffering and doctrine. John 16, verses 7 through 9. Nevertheless, I tell you the truth, it is expedient for you that I go away. For if I go not away, the Comforter will not come unto you. But if I depart, I will send him unto you. And when he is come, he will reprove the world of sin, and of righteousness, and of judgment. Of sin, because they believe not on me.